I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here we are. My name is Kellen, and I need to get this off my chest because honestly, I'm still processing what happened. Growing up, Vex was always the golden child, 3 years older than me, effortlessly charming. The kind of guy who could talk his way out of detention and into the principal's good graces. In the same conversation, Mom and Dad would beam when he walked into a room, like he carried sunshine in his back pocket. Me, I was the reliable one, the one who did homework without being asked, who remembered to feed the dog, who never caused problems. You know how that goes. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I was the wheel that never squeaked. Vex married Lionel when I was 22, fresh out of college and starting my first real job. She was sweet, maybe a little naive, but she adored him. They had Ember and Caspian within 3 years. 2 beautiful kids who inherited Vex's easy smile and Lionel's kind eyes. For a while, everything seemed perfect from the outside. The gambling started small. Fantasy football leagues with co-workers, weekend trips to the nearby casino. Just blowing off steam, he'd say when Lionel would worry about the credit card bills. I remember being at their house for Ember's 5th birthday party, watching Vex get increasingly agitated as he kept checking his phone. Later, Lionel pulled me aside. He's been different lately, she whispered, glancing toward the kitchen, where Vex was loudly telling some story to our parents, secretive. And we had to cancel our vacation because apparently we don't have the money, but I swear we did last month. I should have paid more attention to that conversation, should have asked more questions. But Vex had always been good at explaining things away, and honestly, I had my own life to worry about. I was climbing the ladder at my tech company, finally, feeling like I was building something for myself. The call started about 6 months later. Always late at night, always Vex sounding just slightly off, not drunk, but wound up, talking fast. Hey, Kale, quick question. You know anything about cryptocurrency? I'm thinking of making some investments. Kale, what's a good excuse for missing work, asking for a friend? Do you think Mom and Dad would lend me some cash if I said it was for the kids' college fund? Each call made my stomach twist a little more. When I'd press him for details, he'd laugh it off. You worry too much. Little brother, everything's fine. Better than fine. Actually, I'm working on something big. The something big turned out to be a systematic destruction of everything he'd built. It happened fast. The way these things do. One day he was telling everyone about his new investment strategy. And the next, Lionel was calling me sobbing at 2 a.m. He's gone, she said between gasps. Just packed a bag and left. There's Kellen. There's nothing left. The house, the cars, even the kids' savings accounts. It's all gone. That's when I learned about the $70,000 in debt, not to banks. Banks have rules, payment plans, legal protections. This was to people who don't send polite reminder notices. People who had been asking increasingly pointed questions about when they might see their money. I found Vex 3 days later in a motel 40 miles away, looking like he'd aged 10 years in a week. When he saw me, he just crumpled. I'm sorry. He kept saying, I'm so sorry, Kale. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could win it all back. That's the thing about gambling addiction that nobody tells you. It's not really about the money. It's about the hope. The next bet is always going to be the one that fixes everything, makes it all okay again. And when that hope dies, there's nothing left but the wreckage. Looking at my brother, really looking at him, seeing the hollow eyes and shaking hands. I made a decision that would define the next 2 years of my life. Come home. I said, bring Lionel and the kids. We'll figure this out. He looked at me like I just offered to carry the world on my shoulders. Maybe I had. The logistics of saving someone else's life are more complicated than movies make it seem. First, there was the money. $70,000 isn't a number you just write a check for, even when you've been living below your means and saving aggressively. It meant liquidating my investment accounts, taking a loan against my 401k, and accepting that my own dreams of buying a house were going on indefinite hold. But the money was the easy part. Vex's creditors weren't exactly the type to accept PayPal. I had to meet with people in parking garages and hotel lobbies, always during daylight hours, always bringing a friend who waited in the car. The final payment was made to a guy named Torvin, who looked like he'd stepped out of a crime thriller. Expensive suit, dead eyes. The kind of handshake that could crush walnuts. Your brother's lucky to have family, he said, counting the cash. With practiced efficiency, not everyone's so fortunate. The implicit threat hung in the air like smoke. Meanwhile, my 3-bedroom house suddenly became home to 5 people. Lyanna and the kids took the guest room and my home office, while Vex crashed on the living room couch. The adjustment was rough. Ember was 7, old enough to understand that something was wrong, but too young to process why Daddy was sad all the time and why they couldn't go home. She started having nightmares about monsters taking their house away. Caspian was 5 and mostly just confused about why all his toys were in boxes and why Mommy cried. When she thought no one was looking, Lyanna tried to hold it together. But the betrayal had shattered something fundamental in her. She'd trusted Vex completely, never questioned his handling of their finances. And now she was discovering the scope of his deception, not just the gambling, but the lies. Years of them, fake pay stubs when he'd been fired from jobs, hidden credit cards, money borrowed against life insurance policies she didn't know existed. How do I explain this to the kids? She asked me one evening while we were cleaning up dinner. Vex had disappeared upstairs. He did that a lot, claiming he needed to think or make calls about jobs, but I suspected he was just hiding from the weight of what he'd done. How do I tell them that their father, that everything they thought was real wasn't? I didn't have an answer for that, still don't. Vex threw himself into recovery with the same intensity he'd brought to gambling, AA meetings, therapy, job applications. He'd wake up at 6 a.m., spend hours on his laptop researching addiction resources and career opportunities, then retreat into this manic productivity that felt almost as unhealthy as the gambling had been. I'm going to make this right became his mantra. I'm going to pay you back every penny, Kale, with interest. You saved my family. You're a guardian angel. He said that a lot. Guardian angel. Usually when he was feeling overwhelmed by guilt or when he needed something else. A ride to an interview because Lyanna had the car. Money for work clothes because he'd gained weight and nothing fit. Help with his resume because his employment history had some gaps. That needed creative explaining. Don't get me wrong. I wanted him to succeed, but there was something performative about his gratitude that made me uncomfortable. Like he thought if he said the right words often enough, it would somehow balance the scales. The kids adapted better than the adults. Children are resilient that way. Ember discovered my gaming console and became obsessed with puzzle games. Caspian appointed himself my shadow, following me around the house and helping with chores by making them take 3 times longer. They both started calling me Uncle Kale, which did something strange to my heart every time I heard it. But the adults, we were all walking on eggshells, trying to navigate this new dynamic where boundaries had been obliterated by necessity. Lyanna felt guilty about disrupting my life, so she overcompensated by trying to be the perfect house guest, cooking elaborate meals, deep cleaning rooms that were already clean, refusing to let me pay for anything the kids needed. Vex swung between crushing remorse and manic optimism, with no middle ground, and me. I was slowly realizing that being someone's guardian angel is a full-time job, that no one prepares you for. My dating life disappeared completely. Hard to bring someone home when there are toys scattered across every surface and children's schedules dictate your weekends. My social life became non-existent. Who wants to hang out with the guy whose every story starts with, well, my brother's kids needed? But I told myself it was temporary. Vex was getting better, getting job interviews, talking about finding an apartment. Lyanna was looking into going back to school, maybe getting some kind of certification that would help her support the family if needed. It was temporary. It had to be. 8 months in, I started noticing the small things first. Money missing from my wallet. Never much. 20 here, 40 there. Amounts I might have spent and forgotten about, except I'm obsessive about tracking expenses. Always have been. It's what allowed me to save $70,000 in the first place. Then there were the phone calls. Vex would step outside to take them, claiming they were potential employers or program coordinators. But his body language was wrong. The hunched shoulders, the way he'd pace in tight circles, the quick glances toward the house like he was afraid of being overheard. I told myself I was being paranoid. Trauma makes you suspicious. And I'd been through enough trauma for one lifetime. Vex was trying, really trying. He'd landed a job at a construction company, nothing glamorous, but steady work with decent pay. He was going to meetings, following his program, talking about making amends. But addicts are liars by necessity. They have to be. And just because someone is in recovery doesn't mean they automatically become honest. It means they become better at justifying their dishonesty. The credit card alert started in month 10. Someone was using my information to make small online purchases, streaming services, mobile games, digital subscriptions. The kind of charges that might slip by unnoticed if you weren't paying attention. But I was paying attention because I'd learned to pay attention to everything when I confronted Vex. He had explanations for everything. His phone had been hacked. Someone at work must have seen him using my laptop. Identity theft was so common these days. Hadn't I seen the news stories? Why would I risk everything over $20 charges? He asked, and the hurt in his eyes looked so genuine that I almost believed him. Kale, you saved my life. You really think I'd steal from you? But then I started finding the scratch-off lottery tickets, hidden in couch cushions, stuffed in jacket pockets, crumpled in the bathroom wastebasket. Not many, but enough, and that's when I knew recovery isn't linear. I'd learned that phrase in the family support meetings I'd started attending. Relapse is part of the process, not a failure of character, but a symptom of the disease. I understood it intellectually. Living it was different. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday evening. Lyanna was at a job training seminar. The kids were at their weekly therapy session, another expense I'd taken on. And I found Vex in my home office, logged into my banking app on my laptop. Just checking our account balance, he said when he saw me in the doorway. Our account. Like my money had somehow become communal property through proximity. Get out of my office, I said quietly. Kale, come on, don't be like that. I was just, get out. He left, but not before I saw him slip something into his pocket. Later, I found my credit card was missing from my wallet. I canceled it immediately. But not before seeing the pending charges, $300 at an online casino. Placed 20 minutes after our conversation. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I locked my bedroom door, and I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering when my house had stopped feeling like my home. The pattern accelerated after that. Vex would find new ways to access money. Gift cards stolen from the grocery store during shopping trips, selling my possessions on Facebook Marketplace while I was at work, even taking loans from his co-workers using my house as collateral without my knowledge. Each time I caught him, he'd break down. The tears were real, the remorse was real, the promises were real. But so was the next theft, the next lie, the next betrayal. Lyanna suspected. But she was caught in her own impossible position. Confronting Vex meant potentially destroying the fragile stability they'd built, maybe ending up homeless again with 2 children to protect, so she developed a kind of selective blindness, noticing just enough to protect herself, but not enough to have to act on what she knew. The kids were oblivious, which was probably for the best. To them, Uncle Kel's house was just home now. Ember had made friends at her new school. Caspian had memorized every dinosaur book in my collection. And they both assumed this living situation was permanent, which is maybe why what happened next hurt so much. I'd been offered a promotion at work, a significant one, with a salary increase that would finally let me start rebuilding my savings. But it required relocating to our Seattle office for 3 months to oversee a product launch. This is amazing, Kale, Lyanna said when I told them, you deserve this so much. Vex nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely, you sacrificed so much. For us, it's time you focused on yourself again. His support felt genuine. For the first time in months, he seemed like the brother I remembered from before everything went to hell. We talked about how he'd take over more of the household responsibilities. How this could be a fresh start for all of us. That I should have known better. I should have remembered that addicts are most dangerous when they're being supported, because that's when you stop watching them closely. But I was tired. Tired of being suspicious. Tired of monitoring bank accounts. Tired of being the responsible one. So when Vex offered to handle things while I was gone, I said yes. The biggest mistake of my life. Seattle was supposed to be my reset. 3 months of hotel living, focused entirely on work. No children's schedules to navigate or family drama to manage. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I could make decisions based solely on what I wanted to do. I threw myself into the project, working 12-hour days and loving every minute of it. The product launch was more successful than anyone had projected, and my supervisor started hinting about permanent opportunities on the West Coast. Real advancement, the kind of career trajectory I'd put on hold when I decided to play Guardian. Angel.Vex and I talked every few days. He'd update me on the kids. Ember had joined the school chess club. Caspian had learned to ride a bike and on his own progress. He'd gotten a promotion at the construction company, was looking at apartments, talking about moving out by the end of the year. You've done so much for us, he said during one call, but we can't live in your space forever. It's time we stood on our own feet. It sounded healthy, responsible. Like maybe the person I'd grown up with was finally emerging from the wreckage of addiction. 3 weeks into my Seattle assignment, I got a call from Lionel. She was crying, which wasn't unusual. She still had days when the weight of everything crushed down on her. But this was different. Vex has been acting strange. She said he's been having a lot of meetings, staying out late, talking about big opportunities. And yesterday I found real estate paperwork in his jacket pocket. He said it was nothing, just looking at rental properties, but what? It had your name on it, Kale, and it wasn't rentals. It was a listing for your house. The bottom fell out of my world. I tried calling Vex immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later, then every hour after that. Finally, at 11 p.m. Pacific time, he called back. Kale, how's Seattle treating you? His voice was too bright, too energetic. The voice he used when he was planning something. Vex, what's this about real estate paperwork? Oh, that, yeah, I can explain. See, I've been thinking about our situation, and I realized something. You're never going to get your life back as long as we're living in your house. So I started looking into options for moving out. And this realtor mentioned that your property value has gone up significantly. Like, really significantly. Okay, so I thought, what if we could find a way for everyone to win? You sell the house, make a profit, use that money to get a fresh start wherever you want. We take part of the proceeds and put a down payment on our own place. Everyone gets what they need. It sounded reasonable. The way Vex always sounded reasonable. But something was wrong with the math. Vex, I'm not ready to sell. And even if I were, any decision like that would involve extensive discussion and, of course, absolutely, I was just exploring options, getting information, nothing more. But I could hear something in his voice, something that reminded me of the weeks before his gambling spiral had fully revealed itself. That manic confidence that preceded every bad decision. I cut my Seattle assignment short. Told my supervisor there was a family emergency, which wasn't technically a lie, and flew back to Chicago on the first available flight. The key didn't work. I stood on my own front porch at 7 a.m., suitcase in hand, staring at the door. That should have opened with the key I'd used for 5 years. For a moment, I thought maybe there was some mistake. Maybe Vex had changed the locks for security reasons and forgotten to mention it. Then I noticed the yard signs, the ones advertising the barbecue party happening that afternoon in my backyard, hosted by Vex. I walked around to the back of the house, my house, and found him setting up tables and grilling equipment, whistling while he worked. When he saw me, his face went through a series of expressions: surprise, guilt, defiance, and finally, that familiar easy smile. Kale, you're back early. I was going to call you about the party, just a little neighborhood thing, you know? Build some community connections. Why doesn't my key work? Ah, yeah, about that. He stopped pretending to organize napkins and looked at me directly. I can explain everything. But the short version is, I've been working on that solution I mentioned, the one where everybody wins. Vex, why doesn't my key work? Because I sold the house. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered backward. You sold my house. I sold our house. Look, I know this seems sudden, but I've been working on this for weeks. The market is incredible right now, and I found a buyer who was willing to pay 20% over asking price. Cash offer, quick close. We cleared almost $90,000 in profit. We, you and me, partners. I used your power of attorney to handle the paperwork while you were busy in Seattle. I didn't want to bother you with all the details when you were focused on your big project. I stared at him, at my brother, who was standing in the backyard of the house I had bought with my own money, explaining how he'd sold it without my knowledge or consent while setting up a party to celebrate. I don't have a power of attorney, I said slowly. His smile flickered. Well, technically, no, but I'm family. And I did the research. As long as there's no fraud involved, these things can be worked out retroactively. Especially since you're going to be happy with the outcome. You forged my signature. I handled the paperwork. Look, Kale, I know you're upset right now, but when you see the numbers, when you understand what this means for all of us, where are my children? The question came out flat and deadly quiet, because suddenly I realized that Ember and Caspian were nowhere to be seen, and Lionel's car wasn't in the driveway. They're at Lionel's sister's place, just for the weekend, while we sort everything out. I thought it would be better if we could talk privately first, you know. Get out. Kale, get out of my house. It's not your house anymore, brother. That's what I'm trying to tell you, but the good news is, you're free now. Free to take that Seattle job. Free to travel. Free to do whatever you want with your share of the money. I've actually been thinking, get out. My voice echoed across the neighborhood. Several windows opened. Curtains twitched. Vex glanced around nervously, then back at me. You're emotional right now. That's understandable. This is a big change. But when you calm down and think about it logically, I turned and walked away. Because if I stayed one more second, I was going to do something that would land me in jail. As I reached the front yard, I heard him call after me. Come on, Kale, you're smart. Go build another one. Those words followed me as I climbed into my rental car, as I drove to a hotel, as I sat in a generic room staring at my phone, trying to figure out how to rebuild a life that had just been stolen from under me. But somewhere between the shock and the grief, something else began to emerge. Rage. Cold. Calculated, focused rage. Vex had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed that being family meant I would always choose forgiveness over justice. He was about to learn otherwise. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my hotel room with my laptop, methodically documenting every transaction, every forged signature, every fraudulent action my brother had taken over the past 2 years. The credit card fraud, the identity theft, the unauthorized loans, and now, the ultimate betrayal, selling my house using forged documents. The thing about being the responsible one your whole life is that you keep records. Bank statements, email chains, text messages, photographs with timestamps, evidence, and addicts. Even recovering addicts leave trails everywhere because they're always operating in crisis mode. Always taking shortcuts, always assuming they'll figure out the consequences later. Vex hadn't just committed fraud. He'd committed fraud while leaving a paper trail that led directly back to him. My first call was to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but Delia Ravencrest, a woman I'd met through work who specialized in white-collar crime and family fraud cases. She had a reputation for being thorough, ruthless, and expensive, worth every penny. This is a complex case, she said after I'd laid out the situation. Property fraud, identity theft, potentially racketeering if we can prove a pattern of financial crimes. How much evidence do you have? I sent her 3 folders worth of documents. This is comprehensive, she said after reviewing everything. Your brother made this easy for us. When do you want to move forward? How quickly can we freeze his assets? If he used the proceeds from your house sale to open new accounts, we can have those frozen by Monday morning. The criminal complaint will take a few more days to process, but given the strength of the evidence, I expect arrest warrants by the end of the week. While Delia handled the legal aspects, I tackled the personal ones. I called Lyanna's sister, Mira, who confirmed that Lyanna and the kids were staying with her temporarily. Lyanna's a mess, Mira said bluntly. She suspected something was happening, but Vex told her it was all authorized, that you'd agreed to it. When she realized the truth, she grabbed the kids and ran. She's terrified about what this means for them. Can I talk to her? I'll ask, but Kale, she's not just scared of Vex right now, she's scared of you too. She thinks you're going to blame her for what happened. Maybe try to take the kids away from her because she didn't stop him. That hit me harder than I'd expected. Lyanna had become like a sister to me over the past 2 years, and the idea that she feared me was devastating, but I understood it too. When your world gets destroyed by someone you trusted, it becomes hard to trust anyone completely. I arranged to meet her at a neutral location, a coffee shop near Mira's house. She looked like she'd aged years in the weeks since I'd left for Seattle. Dark circles under her eyes, clothes that hung loose like she'd been forgetting to eat, hands that shook slightly when she lifted her coffee cup. I'm so sorry, were the first words out of her mouth. I should have stopped him. I should have called you the moment I suspected something was wrong. But I was scared, and I thought maybe this time he really had found a legitimate solution. And Lyanna, stop. She looked at me with those wide, frightened eyes. You're not responsible for what Vex did. You're not his keeper any more than I am. He made these choices, and he's going to face the consequences of them. But that doesn't change anything about how I feel about you and the kids. But we disrupted your entire life, and then he destroyed it, and you didn't destroy anything. Vex did, and honestly, the kids gave me some of the happiest moments I've had in years. Ember teaching me chess. Caspian insisting I was the only one who could read his bedtime stories the right way. That wasn't disruption. That was family. She started crying then. Not the quiet tears I'd become accustomed to, but deep, body shaking. Sobs that seemed to come from someplace she'd been holding them back for weeks. I don't know what to do now, she whispered. I don't have anywhere to go. any way to support the kids. Everything was in his name, and now that's all gone, and I'm 34 years old with no career and 2 children, and you're going to be okay, I said. And for the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt something other than rage. I meant what I said about family. Vex might have forfeited his place in my life, but you and the kids haven't. We talked for another hour about practical things, where she and the children would live while everything got sorted out. Mira's place was too small for a long-term solution, but I had some ideas. How we'd handle the kids' school situation, what kind of support she'd need to get back on her feet, but mostly, I wanted her to understand that Vex's choices didn't define her, didn't make her complicit, didn't change the fact that she'd been victimized just as much as I had, maybe more. Because she'd lost not just her security, but her ability to trust the person she'd built her life around. What's going to happen to him? She asked as we were preparing to leave. That depends on him, I said. If he cooperates, if he shows genuine remorse and tries to make things right, maybe we can work something out that doesn't involve prison time. But Lyanna, I need you to understand something. I'm done enabling him, done making his problems disappear, done setting myself on fire to keep him warm. She nodded slowly. The kids have been asking about him, about when they'll see Daddy again. What do you tell them? That Daddy made some bad choices and needs to figure out how to fix them. That sometimes adults mess up so badly that there have to be serious consequences. That's exactly right. As I drove back to my hotel, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Clarity. For so long, I'd been caught up in the chaos of Vex's addiction, letting his crises dictate my decisions, my priorities, my entire life structure. But now, for the first time, I was acting from a place of choice rather than reaction. Vex had taught me something valuable, even if he hadn't meant to. The difference between helping someone and enabling them, between love and codependency, between being family and being a victim. Monday morning, his bank accounts were frozen. Tuesday, the arrest warrant was issued. Wednesday, the custody paperwork was filed, not because I wanted to take the children away from Lyanna, but because I wanted to ensure they were protected if Vex tried to use them as leverage or bargaining chips. I didn't sleep much those 3 days. But it wasn't from anxiety or uncertainty. It was from anticipation. Because I knew that Thursday morning, my brother was going to wake up to discover that actions have consequences, and that family loyalty has limits. And after 2 years of cleaning up his messes, I was finally going to watch him clean up his own. Thursday morning came gray and cold, with that kind of October chill that cuts through your jacket and settles in your bones. I was up before dawn, not because I had to be, but because I couldn't sleep. Today was the day everything came full circle. My phone rang at 7:43 a.m. Unknown number. But I knew who it would be. Kale. Vex's voice was high-pitched, panicked. Something's wrong with my bank account. The ATM won't work. And when I called the bank, they said there's some kind of hold on everything, and there are police outside outside the house that used to be yours, but the house you stole from me. I corrected calmly. Kale, please, I know you're angry, but this isn't the way to handle things. We're family. We can work this out between us. We don't need lawyers and police. And click. I hung up. He called back immediately. I declined the call. He called again. Declined again. The third time, I turned my phone off entirely. At 8:15, Delia called my hotel room. It's done, she said. Simply, he was arrested without incident about 20 minutes ago. The charges are extensive. Wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, grand theft. The prosecutor thinks we have enough for a conviction on all counts. What's the timeline? Arraignment is tomorrow. Depending on whether he can make bail, which is unlikely given the flight risk assessment, trial could be scheduled within 6 months. But Kale, I think he's going to want to make a deal. The evidence is overwhelming. And his lawyer is going to tell him that going to trial is essentially asking for maximum sentencing. After I hung up, I sat in my hotel room for a long time, waiting to feel something. Satisfaction, maybe, relief, victory, but mostly what I felt was empty, tired. Like I'd been holding my breath for 2 years and could finally exhale. The next few days were a blur of legal proceedings and media coverage. Apparently, property fraud cases involving family members make for good local news stories. Brother steals brother's home ran in the Tribune. Several neighbors were interviewed, all expressing shock that such a nice family could be involved in something so sordid. Vex couldn't make bail. The judge, citing the pattern of financial fraud and the defendant's history of addiction-related criminal behavior, set it at $200,000, far more than he could access with his accounts frozen, and his credibility destroyed. I visited him once, 3 days after his arrest. He looked smaller in the orange jumpsuit, older. Like the weight of his choices had finally settled on his shoulders in a way he couldn't charm or explain away. Why? He asked when he saw me, not how could you do this to me or we're family, or any of the manipulative responses I'd expected. Just why? Because you never learned to stop. I said, every time I bailed you out, every time I fixed your problems, every time I chose forgiveness over consequences, I taught you that your actions didn't matter. That someone would always be there to clean up your messes. But the house, you stole my house, Vex. You forged my signature and sold the place I'd worked for years to afford. You took the money and threw a party in my backyard, and when I confronted you, you told me to go build another one, like my life was just some inconvenience you could dismiss. He was quiet for a long time. Then I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd see that I was trying to help everyone make a fresh start. You thought I'd enable you one more time, and maybe 6 months ago, you would have been right, but you pushed too far. Vex, you finally found my limit. So what happens now? Now you face the consequences of your choices. Maybe you go to prison. Maybe you work out a plea deal and get probation with restitution requirements, but either way, you do it without me cleaning up after you. And Lyanna, the kids, they're going to be fine, better than fine, because they're going to learn what it means to build a life without walking on eggshells around your addiction. I stood to leave, then turned back. For what it's worth, Vex, I hope you get clean, really clean, this time, not because you need something from someone, not because you're trying to avoid consequences, but because you decide you want to be the person you were before all this started. But that's your journey now, not mine. He nodded slowly, and for the first time in years, I saw something genuine in his expression. Not the practiced remorse he'd used to manipulate me, but actual understanding of what he'd lost. 3 weeks later, Vex accepted a plea deal, 5 years probation, full restitution of the house sale, proceeds plus damages, mandatory addiction treatment, and community service. He'd avoid prison time, but he'd spend the next half-decade rebuilding his life from scratch under court supervision. The house sale was reversed through legal action, but the process would take months. The buyers, who'd acted in good faith, were understandably upset about the situation. Eventually, we worked out a settlement where they kept the house but paid a fair market price, rather than the inflated amount Vex had negotiated. I used the difference to put a down payment on a new place, smaller than what I'd lost, but mine in a way the old house had never quite been. After it became a shelter for my brother's family, Lyanna and the kids moved into a duplex about 10 minutes from my new house. I helped her get enrolled in a nursing program at the community college, and she found work at a pediatric clinic that offered tuition reimbursement. For the first time since I'd known her, she was building something that belonged entirely to her. The kids adapted with that resilient way children have. Ember joined the chess club at her new school and started teaching other kids the strategies I'd taught her. Caspian discovered a love for building things, Legos, model airplanes, elaborate blanket forts that took over entire rooms. They still called me Uncle Kale, still spent weekends at my place, but now it felt different. Chosen rather than imposed by circumstance. 6 months after Vex's arrest, I got a letter from him. Not a request for money or help, not an attempt to manipulate me into visiting or advocating for early release from his probation terms, just an apology. A real one. Kale, I've been in therapy for months now, court mandated at first. But I'm paying for extra sessions because I'm finally starting to understand what I did. Not just the house, but everything. All of it. You were right when you said I never learned to stop. The gambling was just a symptom. The real problem was that I never learned to face consequences. Never developed the tools to handle failure or disappointment without looking for someone else to fix it. I know saying sorry doesn't undo anything. Doesn't give you back the years you spent cleaning up my messes. Doesn't restore the trust I destroyed, doesn't erase the damage I did to my own children. But I need you to know that I finally understand what I cost you, not just money, though. That was significant, but your peace of mind, your relationships, your ability to build your own life. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that the brother you grew up with, the one who got lost in addiction and selfishness and manipulation, he's trying to find his way back, not for you, not for Lyanna, not even for the kids. For himself, because that's the only way it means anything. I hope you're building something beautiful. Kale, you deserve that. Vex, I read the letter 3 times. Then put it in a drawer, not because I was ready to forgive. Forgiveness is a process, not an event, and I wasn't there yet. But because for the first time, it sounded like my brother was taking responsibility without expecting anything in return. A year later, I ran into our parents at Ember's school play. They'd been conspicuously absent during the worst of everything, and seeing them there felt surreal. Kale, Mom said, approaching me cautiously, we wanted to talk to you about everything that happened. Dad nodded. We know we should have been more involved. Should have seen what was happening and stepped in sooner. Should have supported you instead of expecting you to handle everything on your own, Mom added. It was the first time either of them had acknowledged my role in keeping their golden child's life from completely imploding. The first time they'd recognized that maybe, just maybe, the squeaky wheel shouldn't always get all the attention. I appreciate that, I said, and meant it. But I'm not angry with you anymore. I'm not angry with anyone anymore, and I realized, as I said it, that it was true. The rage that had sustained me through the legal proceedings, the hurt that had driven me to seek justice instead of offering forgiveness, it had all transformed into something else. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of peace, an understanding that everyone in this story had been playing roles that no longer fit. After the play, Ember ran up to me with her costume still half on, grinning from ear to ear. Did you see me, Uncle Kale? Did you see my solo? I saw everything. I told her, you were perfect. And she was. They all were, in their own complicated, messy, human ways, even Vex. Wherever he was in his journey toward becoming someone worthy of the second chance he'd never asked me for but might earn anyway. That night, I sat in my new house, truly mine this time, with a mortgage in my name only and keys that worked because I was the only one who had them, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years, contentment. Not happiness exactly, because happiness is fleeting and dependent on circumstances, but contentment. The deep satisfaction of knowing that I'd finally learned the difference between love and enabling, between family loyalty and self-destructs, between helping someone and allowing them to help themselves. I'd built something new from the wreckage of what I lost, something smaller, maybe, but infinitely more solid, a life with boundaries, a family chosen rather than inherited, a future that belonged to me. Vex had been right about one thing in the end. I was smart enough to build another one. I just hadn't needed his permission to do it.